Hi, my name is Ashish, and in this video we will see create and configure sensitivity labels and policies in Microsoft Purview. I will just log on to the portal and take it from there. Alright, we are logged on to the portal. Now, all Microsoft Purview information protection solutions are implemented by using sensitivity labels, which you will see if you go to information protection and sensitivity labels. Now to create and publish these labels, we can use either the Microsoft Purview portal or Microsoft Purview compliance portal or the new purview.microsoft.com. You'll have to first create and configure the sensitivity labels that you want to make available for apps and other services. For example, the labels you want users to see and apply from Office apps. Then you'll create one or more label policies that contains the labels and policy settings that you configure. When you publish the label policy to your selected users, the labels become visible to these users in their apps that support sensitivity labels. The policy settings are applied to these users. And before we begin, to make sure that you have permissions, you have to see the permissions required to create and manage sensitivity labels. The permissions that are required to do this is that you should have a role of information protection admin, or information protection analyst, information protection investigators, or information protection readers. And you can do that by adding the desired user into the role groups from here. I've covered this part in my previous videos. When you come back here, you click on sensitivity labels. Here you see an option create a label. You enter a friendly name, my label 1. Display name, my label 1. You set the label priority here. By default, you should see the default labels, which is personal, public, journal, confidential, and highly confidential. I'll see why am I not seeing them in the portal. And we don't see any labels, so let me not create my label as one. I'll use this as a personal. By default, these labels will be assigned the highest priority, but you can change it after it is created. Okay. I'll keep this as well. Personal, description for admins, label color. Next. In here, you define the scope of this label. Files and other assets, emails, meetings, data assets, which is still in Purview. And you cannot select meetings unless filed and other assets. And emails are also selected. Right, so if I uncheck this, I'll not be able to go for meetings. So you check this, and then you'll be able to add this to meetings. Click on next. Choose protection settings for the types of items you selected. The protection settings you configure will be enforced when the label is applied to items in Microsoft 365. So content watermarking, control who can access and view labeled items, protect Teams meetings and chats. I'll skip this option for now. Auto labeling for files and emails. When users edit Office files or compose, reply to or forward emails from Outlook that contain content matching the condition you choose here, will automatically apply this label or recommend that they apply it themselves. Okay. Now you have to detect the content that matches these conditions. So you'll have to add a conditions here like content create, group name, default, or you add a sensitive information types. I'll discuss what are sensitive information types. That's why I'm skipping this for now. So I'll not use auto labeling. We'll discuss that later. Define protection settings for groups and sites. These settings apply to teams and sites that have this label applied. They don't apply directly to the files stored in these containers. Control external sharing and configure conditional access, private teams, discoverability and shared channel settings, privacy and external user access. I'll skip this part as well. I'll change this to personal as well. Okay, I'm just going with the as-is options just to show you how to create a label. I'll click on done. Alright, it says publish the label. Publish personal to an existing or a new label policy. Right? So you click on create a new label policy. Now you'll select labels to publish. Now once you have a label, it will not apply until you publish it. So you choose sensitivity label to publish. You only have one label. I'll select it. Click on next. Assign admin units. Choose the admin units you would like to assign this policy to. Admin units are created in Microsoft Entra ID and restrict the policy to a specific set of users or groups. I'll not publish to users and groups. I'm publishing to all the users. Policy settings. Configure settings for the labels included in this policy. User must provide a justification to remove a label or lower its classification. Require users to apply a label to their emails and documents. Require users to apply a label to their Fabric and Power BI content. Provide users with a link to a custom help page. So these options, if you select, it will follow these settings whenever you apply a label or configure anything on the selected options while you create a label. Apply a default label to documents. The label you choose will automatically be applied to Word, Excel or PowerPoint documents when they are created or modified. So I'll select personal just for the purpose of this lab. Apply a default label to emails. Same as document. I can select none, that I don't want to apply any labels to my emails. A default label to emails. Inherit labels from attachments. If I select it on like personal, I can check this option that the attachments also would get the personal label. But I'm selecting none here and I'll not select this option as well. Apply a default label to meetings. I'll go for none. To Fabric and Power BI, no. This is the policy. I will say personal label policy. Whatever you want to do it. Select next. Select submit. New policy created. Next steps would be to review data classification reports or read the guidance to see how the labels are being used. So when you will click on it, you'll see the data classification on Purview portal. Alright, so then there are additional label settings with security and compliance PowerShell that you should see. And then example configuration to configure a sensitivity label for different languages as well. And then there are some PowerShell tips for specifying the advanced settings. I already told you how you publish it. Okay. Now when to expect new labels and changes to take effect. So this is not just a click thing that will happen as soon as it is applied. So for labels and label policy settings, you need to allow 24 hours for the changes to propagate through the services. There are many external dependencies that each have their own timing cycles. So it's a good idea to wait this 24-hour time period before you spend time troubleshooting labels and label policies for recent changes. Please keep this in mind. And you can also use PowerShell for sensitivity labels and their policies to perform all these actions. And one more point, when it comes to removing and deleting labels. So now in a production environment, it's unlikely that you'll need to remove sensitivity labels from a label policy or delete sensitivity label. It's more likely that you might need to do one or either of these actions during an initial testing phase. Now make sure that you understand what happens when you do remove or delete a label. Removing a label from a label policy is less risky than deleting it. And because it can always be added back. If you remove a label, you can add a label to the policy. You can't delete a label if it's still in label policy. So if a label is added into the label policy, it cannot be deleted. Now when you remove a label from a label policy and the label is no longer published to the originally specified users, the next time the label policy is refreshed, users no longer see that label to see in their Office apps. Now if that label is already applied, the label is not removed from the content or container. For example, users who are using built-in labeling in desktop apps for Word, Excel and PowerPoint still see the applied label name on the status bar, and applied container label continues to protect the Teams or SharePoint site. Now in comparison, when you delete a label, if the label applied encryption, the underlying protection template is archived so that previously protected content can still be opened. And because of this archived protection template, you can't create a new label with the same name. Although it's possible to delete a protection template by using PowerShell, please don't do this unless you're sure you don't need to open content that was encrypted. Please read Microsoft documentation before making any changes to your to the labels or label policies. Alright, I believe this was informative for all of you, and if you need any further information, please mention your queries in the comment section, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Have a good day.